Battle Through the Heavens, Episode 209. At the end of the previous episode, the purifying demonic lotus flame enveloped Xiao Yan as he resisted the ancient. Overwhelming pressure within a 50-kilometer radius, only the top experts from both sides could remain, while everyone else was forced away. Strange ripples soon appeared around the ancient stone door as space warped, forming a translucent tunnel. The instant it took shape, Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun rushed in, followed closely by Hun Tiandi and the Nihility devouring flame as streaks of light. Seeing this, Xiao Yan shouted and charged into the tunnel as well, enduring the crushing pressure, with the other experts surging in behind him. When all had entered, the sky fell silent, leaving only the ancient stone door standing above the sea of magma. A faint fog enveloped around this mysterious space, causing the entire area to appear misty. This space was completely quiet. That manner was as though it had been quiet for eons. A piece of land floated in this seemingly vast and boundaryless space. The land was suspended in the air without any support. It appeared just like a pavilion in the air. Qi. The loneliness that had lasted for a long time had finally been broken today. The misty space had suddenly become distorted. Immediately, a huge spatial tunnel appeared. Soon after, many figures suddenly rushed out from within. Finally, they landed on that plot of land. Is this the ancient god mansion? Xiao Yan's body had just landed on the ground when his eyes hurriedly swept around him. However, he was stunned to discover that even with the great strength of his die-state soul, he was actually unable to probe beyond a 10,000 feet radius. Clearly, this place imposed quite a great pressure towards spiritual strength. Jun Kai Lin and the rest had also swiftly appeared beside Xiao Yan. Their eyes revealed a cautious expression as they watched this mysterious space, with the many human figures appearing. The experts from both parties also hurriedly separated, after which they stared at the other side with cautious eyes as they readied themselves for various sneak attacks. Do not be delayed by them, let's go. The Nihility devouring flame glanced at Gu Yuan's group, after which his eyes turned towards this realm. There was some strange fluctuation appearing within his eyes, after which he spoke in a soft voice. He subsequently took the lead to hurry into the distance. Hun Tiandi and the experts from the Hun clan quickly followed. The Nihility devouring flame is actually aware of the way. Gu Yuan was startled after he saw this scene. Even he could sense some pressure after arriving in this place. It was impossible for him to probe and locate the Dai-tier embryonic pill within such a short time. Unexpectedly, this Nihility devouring flame seemed to be extremely familiar with the way. The Nihility devouring flame, huh? Zhu Kun was surprised. He immediately nodded while being in a deep thought. It is not surprising for him to know the way. Follow them. Zhu Kun did not give any explanation after his voice sounded. He directly took the lead to give chase. Gu Yuan and the others hesitated for a moment before quickly following him. The two groups charged forward with full force on this seemingly vast and endless land. They were just like falling stars that swiftly cut through the sky. This fast charging continued for over a dozen minutes. Finally, the speed of the Nihility devouring flame and the others in front were gradually reduced. Gu Yuan, Xiao Yan and the others swiftly gave chase after their speed was reduced, after which they looked at the ancient stone hall, which appeared on that spacious plains. A fiery heat flashed within their eyes. The stone hall stood quietly on the vast and endless plains. An ancient aura spread from it and reverberated across the space. In front of the stone hall was an incomparably huge square. There were many 10,000 feet large towering pillars standing on both sides of the square. A towering, majestic aura pounced over from that place. Xiao Yan's group carefully landed on the square. Some rubbing sound quietly sounded on the stone ground as their footsteps landed. There was some distance between both parties, after which they occupied both sides of the hall. They opened their strides and cautiously walked towards the square. This square was extremely spacious. Everyone felt as though they were ants crawling in the desert as they walked on it. It was difficult for them to see its boundary. However, everyone present could already be considered the strongest people on the Duqi continent. All of them possessed some metal toughness, hence no one created an uproar. Everyone's hearts were filled with some respect and fear in this divine-like place. Huh? Xiao Yan's footsteps suddenly paused as he walked. He turned his head and looked at the top of a stone pillar a short distance in front. There was a cluster of deep yellow-colored flame rising from it. This kind of flame allowed Xiaoyan to see from a glance that it was a kind of heavenly flame. If he guessed correctly, this should be the mysterious yellow flame that was ranked 23rd on the heavenly flame ranking. Why is this heavenly flame so weak? However, Xiaoyan soon began to frown. This was indeed the mysterious yellow flame. However, it appeared extremely weak and tiny. Its appearance was as though the strength that was originally within the heavenly flame had been completely lost. Qi. A flame suddenly gathered on Xiaoyan's shoulder as he felt some doubts. After which, little Yi appeared in a flash. It looked at this quiet square, and a somewhat lost expression suddenly surged within its eyes. This place is very familiar. Xiaoyan's footsteps suddenly paused after he heard little Yi's low voice. He turned his head and looked at little Yi in shock. Familiar? This was the ancient god mansion. Who could be familiar with this place? What happened? Light flashed across Xiaoyan's eyes, a thought appeared in his heart, and it was transmitted to little Yi's heart. I don't know. I simply feel that this place is a little familiar. It seems that I have been here in the past. Little Yi replied while feeling lost. Xiaoyan's expression changed rapidly. Been here in the past? How could it be possible? The ancient god mansion was opened for the first time. Before this, he had never heard of the ancient god mansion being opened before. Hence, Xiaoyan first thought was that it was ridiculous when he heard little Yi mentioned that it seemed to have been to this place before. Soon after, however, he thought that little Yi, who was mentally connected to him, would definitely not lie. In this way, it seemed that there is a very high possibility that what little Yi had said was true. However, Xiaoyan did not understand why little Yi would feel that this place was familiar. Xiaoyan frowned tightly. His footsteps caught up with the others. At this moment, everyone had also discovered the heavenly flames on the stone pillars. However, the heavenly flames was ranked too far behind, hence they did not pay much attention to it. However, they had walked for another 1,000 feet when another towering stone pillar appeared. There was also a cluster of flame rising on the stone pillar. 10,000 beast spirit flame, ranked 22nd on the heavenly flame ranking. Xiaoyan slowly exhaled as he looked at the cluster of rising red flame, which vaguely revealed the appearance of tens of thousands of beasts. His eyes flashed, after which he looked forward. His footsteps sped up greatly. Seeing this, Gu Yuan and the others hurriedly followed. They once again advanced by 1,000 feet. Another stone pillar appeared. There was also a different heavenly flame rising from it. However, these heavenly flames did not possess an overly great strength. At a glance, it appeared just like a decoration. However, Xiaoyan, who was well versed in heavenly flames, understood that these heavenly flames were not fake. They were all genuine heavenly flames. These heavenly flamed. Gu Yuan's group looked at this scene. Their eyes revealed a shocked expression. It seems that the heavenly flame ranking is higher the further in front it is located, Xiaoyan softly muttered. He turned his head and looked at little Yi, which was sitting on his shoulder, after which his eyes turned to the nihility devouring flame a short distance away. The latter's emotion also seemed to have a big ripple. However, there seemed to be a lost expression similar to that of little Yi in them. Faster, Xiaoyan urged, after which he quickened his footsteps. The group hurriedly followed. With their increase in speed, many towering stone pillars appeared one after another. The heavenly flames ranked on the heavenly flame rankings rose these stone pillars. Amongst these heavenly flames, Xiaoyan could see an extremely familiar green lotus core flame, fallen heart flame, sea heart flame, bone-chilling flame, etc. It is unexpected that the Toshi ancient god actually loves to collect heavenly flames. After seeing the 6th ranked flame on the heavenly flame ranking, the 8 wasteland destruction flame, even Gu Yuan could not resist exclaiming, "I wonder if the legendary top 3 ranked heavenly flames on the heavenly flame ranking are here." Yanjin nodded. He suddenly looked at little Yi on Xiaoyan's shoulder and the nihility devouring flame a short distance away. Although heavenly flames were rare in this world, there were more than one of each type. However, the top 3 ranked heavenly flames were different. Normally speaking, if there was a purifying demonic lotus flame or a nihility devouring flame existing in this world, there would not be a second flame of the same type appearing. Yet, the purifying demonic lotus flame and the nihility devouring flame were both currently present. One was in Xiaoyan's hands, while the other had turned into a human shape to aid the Hun clan. Could that Tushi ancient god have created a second purifying demonic lotus flame and nihility devouring flame? Go. Yan Jin was clearly not the only person who had such thoughts. Even those from the Hun clan and swiftly increased their speed after exchanging glances. The two groups quickly hurried over the spacious square. A moment later, all the figures came to a sudden halt. At this moment, they had gradually approached the end of the square. Another two towering stone pillars appeared in everyone's sight after they passed by the fourth-ranked Gold Emperor incinerating heavenly flame. Everyone immediately threw their eyes towards the top of the stone pillars the moment they saw the two giant-looking pillars. This time around, however, they did not see any heavenly flame rising from them. The top of the stone pillars were empty. The expected purifying demonic lotus flame and nihility devouring flame were absent from them. In other words, it seemed that these two types of heavenly flames were not included in the Tushi ancient gods collection. Everyone sighed softly after seeing this. They appeared to feel a slight regret. These are the last two stone pillars. It seems that even the Toshi ancient god is unable to obtain the legendary first-ranked heavenly flame. Gu Yuan also spoke somewhat regretfully after seeing the end of the square after the two stone pillars. Xiaoyan did not interrupt. His eyes were merely startled as he stared at the two empty stone pillars. His hands slowly touched little Yi on his shoulder. Suddenly, he recalled the familiar feeling that little Yi had mentioned earlier and how the nihility devouring flame knew the way here. Xiaoyan touched the purifying demonic lotus flame, after which he glanced at the nihility devouring flame only to discover that the latter was looking at the last pillar with a lost expression. The feelings he showed, seeing the somewhat strange expression of the nihility devouring flame, a thought that caused one's head to become numb, slowly rose from within Xiaoyan's heart. It is not that the Toshi ancient god had not collected the purifying demonic lotus flame and the nihility devouring flame. Instead, the both of them had fled from this place. This thought had just rose from his head when it swiftly spread to every part of Xiaoyan's body and he could no longer escape from it. Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath of air. He suppressed the great shock within his heart. If he guessed correctly, this Tushi ancient god was really terrifying. Other than the first-ranked heavenly flame on the heavenly flame ranking, these heavenly flames might possess their original heavenly flame essence, but it appears as though all of its energy had disappeared. Currently, they are merely ordinary flames with their original forms. Xiaoyan's eyes swept over those towering stone pillars behind him and involuntarily felt somewhat regretful. If it was possible to devour and refine them, it was likely that his strength would reach a relatively terrifying extent, swallowing 20 types of heavenly flames together. It was likely that hardly anyone past or present had been able to do it. Little Yi sat on Xiaoyan's shoulder. Its small face was a little complicated. It looked at the second stone pillar, and the expression on its small face was a little complicated. The expression seemed to be lost, painful, terrifying. Xiaoyan's hand gently patted on little Yi's head. He could already be certain that little Yi and the nihility devouring flame were restrained on this stone pillar. In the end, however, the two of them had somehow escaped. Perhaps something unexpected had occurred, resulting in their memories become blurry or missing. Of course. This was only Xiaoyan's guess. It was likely that no one in the world was aware of what exactly happened. After all, the parties involved, namely the purifying demonic lotus flame and the nihility devouring flame, had already felt their distant memories becoming blurry. Where is the D-tier embryonic pill? Hun Tiandi withdrew his eyes from the stone pillar. He looked at the nihility devouring flame at the side and softly said, the nihility devouring flame turned his head. His eyes looked at the edge of the square. The stone hall at that spot was enveloped within a dense fog. It caused one to be unable to see through the scene inside. Whoosh, whoosh. The nihility devouring flame widened his mouth. A suction force surged. It directly swallowed the fog permeating over the place into his body. With the scattering of the fog, a huge shadow suddenly enveloped the entire place. Everyone hurriedly lifted his head, only to be shocked as he saw a 100,000 feet tall stone statue suddenly appeared in their eyes. The stone statue appeared to be like an old man. That appearance was not unfamiliar to Xiaoyan. It was the owner of the ancient god mansion, the legendary Toshi ancient god. The stone statue stood in the sky, and an extremely powerful aura that seemed to dominate the world scattered from it. Even Xiao Yan's group seemed to be pressed by a mountain under the aura. A couple of weaker individuals even knelt on the ground, shattering the hard stone ground into dust. Many light clusters danced around the stone statue. It appeared extremely brilliant when seen from afar. These are Qi method and Dao skills. Xiao Yan narrowed his eye as he looked at these clusters of light. His heart was quickly shaken. This was because he discovered that those light cluster actually contained some ancient scrolls inside it. He could sense an extremely strong spirituality from those scrolls. This kind of spirituality was not inferior to the so-called Tian-class high-level Qi method or Dou skills. Hundreds of Tian-class Qi method and Dou skills. Even though everyone present were extraordinary, such a collection still caused their breath to involuntarily become heavier. Tian-class Qi method and Tian-class Dou skill could be considered quite rare even in the Gu and Hun clan. In this place, however, they have become commonplace as they filled one's sight, although the Tian-class Dou skill and Qi method were extremely attractive. It did not result in much desire from experts like Gu Yuan and Hun Tiandi, hence their eyes swept over them before turning towards another spot. However, it was still impossible to see the so-called D-tier embryonic pill. It has been a long time since this place had been so lively. A faint elderly voice suddenly descended from the sky while everyone were frowning. It resounded beside everyone's ears. This sudden elderly voice caused everyone to be shocked. They hurriedly rotated their bodies and finally stilled their eyes on the arm of a stone statue. There was an elderly figure standing with his hands behind him on that spot. His eyes were indifferent as they looked at everyone. The expression in their eyes appeared as though they were observing an ant. Tu Shi, ancient god. The eyes of Xiao Yan's group swept towards the old man in simple clothes before they let out a startled exclamation. The appearance of the latter was exactly the same as that stone statue. Moreover, the unique bright long hair was something that no one could replicate. The ancient god is still alive. An incomparably shocking thought surged into everyone's heart as they dumbly looked at the old man with an aura that seemed to surpass that of this world. What happened? Hun Tiandi's expression was a little ugly. He looked at the nihility devouring flame and spoke in a deep voice. He did indeed sense a terrifying aura from this old man. This kind of aura belonged to the Toshi ancient god. The nihility devouring flame lifted its head. His eyes stared intently at the old man. A moment later, he suddenly opened his mouth and said, "He is not the Toshi ancient god. He is the D-tier embryonic pill, Hun Tiandi." Gu Yuan and the others were startled after hearing these words. Immediately, their eyes revealed a strange glint as they slowly locked onto the old man. "Nihility devouring flame, what are you doing?" The old man on the stone statue was startled as he furiously cried out, "What do you mean by what am I doing?" The nihility devouring flame frowned and asked after hearing his furious cry, "Bastard, if I had not helped you and the purifying demonic lotus flame to sever your restraints back then, how would the both of you escape? Back then, the both of you had promised me to rescue me from this place." That old man, or rather the D-tier embryonic pill, cried out in a stern voice. The bodies of everyone present trembled abruptly after they heard his cry. His eyes were surprised as they looked at the nihility devouring flame and the purifying demonic lotus flame on Xiao Yan's shoulder. They had actually been trapped in this place in the past. The nihility devouring flame had a change in expression. He thought for a long while, but he was still unable to find such a scene from his memories. All he could do was to speak in a faint voice. "I'm sorry, I completely do not remember about the matter you have said." However, his words paused after he spoke until this point. "However, I am indeed here to rescue you this time around. Come with me." The expression of the D-tier pill was a little dark and stern. He stared at the nihility devouring flame for a long while before turning towards the purifying demonic lotus flame on Xiao Yan's shoulder and asked, "Purifying demonic lotus flame, do you still remember our agreement back then?" "Huh?" Little Yi was startled. It quickly grabbed Xiao Yan's shoulder, shook its head and said, "I have never met you." The D-tier medicinal pill's expression became extremely gloomy after hearing this. A moment later, it seemed to have thought of something. He looked at the stone statue beside him, clenched his teeth and muttered, "This is done by you. Right. Follow us." The nihility devouring flame looked at the D-tier medicinal pill and laughed. "Humph, it is likely that you are after my actual form, right? The D-tier medicinal pill smiled coldly, looked at the Nihility Devouring Flame and said, "The Nihility Devouring Flame smiled," after which his expression became stern as he said, "Attack!" Bang! Hun Tiandi suddenly shot forward explosively after his words had just sounded. Monstrous Du-Chi spread. Finally, it turned into a tide as it ruthlessly smashed towards the D-tier embryonic pill. An insignificant trick. The D-tier embryonic pill laughed coldly after seeing this. His finger gently pointed forward. That monstrous energy tide that pounced towards him was actually cut apart. It is extremely difficult to deal with this D-tier embryonic pill. We should capture it first, otherwise, Hun Tiandi might end up obtaining it, Jukun remarked in a deep voice after seeing Hun Tiandi attacked. All of you should be on your guard against the other members of the Hun clan. Gu Yuan nodded, after which he gave the instruction to Xiao Yan's group. The both of them flew out. Immediately, the energy in this place became wild and violent. Waves after waves of attacks, which caused the sky and earth to collapse, continuously attacked the D-tier embryonic pill, faced with the attacks from Hun Tiandi, the Nihility Devouring Flame, Jukun and Gu Yuan. That D-tier embryonic pill did not show any signs of panic. A frightening ripple spread as he lifted his hand. It blocked the attacks from those four. While he might appear unhurt, he was unable to move due to him being held back. Xiao Yan's group involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air as they saw that the D-tier embryonic medicinal pill did not end up in a disadvantage even when facing the four strongest experts on the present continent. Just one D-tier embryonic pill was already this terrifying. Just how terrifying would the true D-tier medicinal pill be? It was likely that even an elite Du-Di would find it somewhat troublesome when faced with a medicinal pill of this tier. The many experts from the Hun clan were ready to cause trouble when the intense big battle broke out in the sky. A cold glint flashed in Xiao Yan's eyes. He waved his hand. Yan Jin and the others rushed forward and blocked all the experts from the Hun clan. The experts from the Hun clan had a slight change in expression after they saw the Hun clan stopping them. However, they did not attack. Clearly, they wished to wait for the big battle in the sky to come to an end. This was because all of them understood that the battle there was the most important one. Whoever managed to obtain the D-tier embryonic pill would immediately be able to turn the battle around. Hence, they were aware that there was little effect, regardless of what kind of intense battle they fought. Bang, 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 bang. 5 figures accompanied with a strength that could destroy the world, crazily smashed against each other in front of everyone's eyes. The energy fluctuation from them caused even the hearts of those located far away to be frightened. Fortunately, this realm was extremely stable, hence this big battle did not lead to a rip in space. Xiao Yan lifted his head. He looked at the wild and violent energy fluctuation in the sky, which caused one to feel a chill. His fist was slowly clenched tightly. The present situation was really a little complicated. The strength displayed by the D-tier embryonic pill was far too frightening. Hence, they currently not only needed to take precaution against the Hun clan snatching the D-tier pill, but they also needed to guard against any injury or deaths inflicted by the D-tier embryonic pill on Gu Yuan and Ju Kun. These two results were definitely fatal to the Alliance army. Hence, there was really far too many variables in this chaotic battle. Bang, bang! A terrifying extermination-like ripple surged across the entire place from the sky. Its aura appeared as though it intended to destroy the world. Xiao Yan had a solemn expression as he stared at the chaotic battleground. A flicker was present in his eyes. Everyone present had underestimated the strength of the D-tier embryonic pill. Originally, Ju Kun thought that with both Gu Yuan and him cooperating, they should be able to subdue it within a short period of time. After exchanging blows, however, he finally discovered that he was too optimistic. Additionally, with Hun Tiandi and the Nihility Devouring Flame entering the body, both parties ended up interrupting each other during the critical junctures. In this way, it had allowed the situation to become even more chaotic. Fortunately, this kind of chaos worked both ways. Ju Kun and Gu Yuan might be unable to successfully subdue the D-tier embryonic pill, but Hun Tiandi and the Nihility Devouring Flame did not have the opportunity to do so either. The Nihility Devouring Flame, whose strength was the weakest amongst the four of them, had even been attacked by both Ju Kun and Gu Yuan for a couple of times. If it was not because of Hun Tiandi aiding him, it was likely that he would have already been injured. Fighting in this manner is not the solution. Yanjin frowned and commented softly as he looked at the chaotic battleground in the sky. Xiaoyan laughed bitterly upon hearing this. They were no longer able to intervene in the battle at that place. If they were to forcefully enter, they would only end up being injured by the extermination force. Hence, they could only simply stand here and stare. Yanjin shook his head helplessly after seeing the bitter smile on Xiaoyan's face. He also understood that they were unable to do anything now. The D-tier embryonic pill had an icy expression in front of everyone's eyes. He flipped his hand. There was a vague, rich pill fragrance surging in the air. "Do not inhale the pill fragrance," Xiaoyan hurriedly cried out. He was suddenly startled after sniffing this mysterious pill fragrance. Under the scent of the pill fragrance, it seemed that even his Du Qi was about to ignite. Everyone hurriedly halted their breath after hearing Xiaoyan's cry. Fortunately, this pill fragrance did not target them. Hence, the Du Qi within their bodies became violent for a moment before it gradually calmed down. Dai pill palm. The Dai-tier medicinal pill in the sky suddenly opened both of his eyes. His body suddenly rose into the air. Finally, his palm was pressed onto the 4 people below. The moment it did so, a human head-sized brilliant light cluster suddenly appeared. Bang, bang, bang. The energy of this place seemed to have met with a hot boiling oil as it was suddenly ignited. At a glance, the seemingly endless sky was covered with a fierce flame. The entire place had become like a furnace at this moment. Even Gu Yuan's group had a drastic change in expression after seeing the might of this palm from the D-tier embryonic pill. The Du Qi within his body was hurriedly maneuvered. The Dai-tier medicinal pill had an even denser icy expression. Both of his hands were suddenly pressed downwards. Immediately, the flame in the sky swiftly whistled downwards at a shocking speed. Within a short instant, the endless flame spreading across the sky had actually entered into brilliant light cluster in the Dai-tier embryonic pill's hands. Extinguish. Both of his hands were pressed downwards and the entire place became dark. Only the light cluster in the palm of the Dai-tier medicinal pill was emitting an extermination-like light. The light cluster shook. Finally, it came whistling downwards. Within a short moment, it had already arrived just above the heads of Gu Yuan's 4 men group. Roar! Even Gu Yuan's group could sense an extremely rich danger in the face of such a terrifying attack. Vast and mighty endless Du Qi surged out in Yuzhen and swiftly formed an extremely powerful defense. Bang, bang! The light cluster heavily smashed onto the Du Qi defense above the 4 individuals. A earth-shaking loud sound appeared as an extermination ripple overflowed. 4 miserable figures fell from the sky and violently landed on the plains. They smashed onto the ground and formed deep crack lines that was 100,000 feet in size. Everyone's expression changed drastically after seeing this scene. No one expected that this Dai-tier embryonic pill would actually be able to fight against 4 experts who had reached the 9-star Dou Sheng class. Although these 4 people were divided into 2 parties, which were scheming against each other. They were, after all, the peak-level experts in this world. It was unexpected that they were still beaten into such a state by the Dai-tier medicinal pill despite them joining hands. The Dai-tier embryonic pill floated in the sky. His eyes were icy cold as he stared at the few 100,000 feet gullies on the plain below. The 4 figures rose into the air in a somewhat miserable manner. They divided into 2 groups and looked at each other from a distance. All of you are still lacking if you wish to refine me. The Dai-tier embryonic pill glanced at those 4 and spoke in a faint voice. Hey, hey, isn't it too early for you to be happy? The Dai-tier embryonic pill's words had only just sounded when the nihility devouring flame suddenly laughed coldly, after which he turned his head to look at Hun Tiandi before speaking in a deep voice. Hand me the Toshi ancient god Jade. Hun Tiandi was startled upon hearing this. He hesitated for a moment before decisively taking out the Toshi ancient god Jade and handing it to the nihility devouring flame. The nihility devouring flame gave the D-tier medicinal pill a dense smile as he grabbed the Toshi ancient god Jade. He spat out a mouthful of black blood containing some black flame and shot it onto the ancient Jade. Both of his hands also began to suddenly form many strange seals. Xiaoyan was startled after seeing the sudden action of the nihility devouring flame. He stared at the latter's hand seals and felt that they were somewhat familiar. After musing for an instant, he suddenly lifted his head and looked at the 100,000 feet large ancient god stone statue. The seal that the stone statue hands had formed was exactly the same as that of the Nihility devouring flame. Hum hum. The Toshi ancient god Jade in front of the Nihility devouring flame began to hum and tremble as the latter's hand seals were rapidly formed. Soon after, a cluster of gentle light spread. The ancient Jade shook and turned into a brilliant light cluster. The light cluster had many colors. There seemed to be a flame dancing within it, giving it an extremely mysterious appearance. Transforming pill ring. How is it possible that you know how to use the Toshi ancient god's transforming pill divine skill? The originally icy cold face of the Dai-tier medicinal pill suddenly changed after seeing the light ring being formed. Even his voice had become a little sharp. The Nihility devouring flame laughed coldly. However, he did not explain. His hand was swung and a brilliant light shot out. Within a short instant, it had appeared above the D-tier embryonic pill. Circular brilliant light surfaced and enveloped the body of the D-tier embryonic pill. With these flame-light clusters continuously wrapping around the body of the Dai-tier medicinal pill. Traces of white smoke suddenly rose from within the latter. Miserable screech suddenly sounded. The Nihility devouring flame's eyes were a little startled. Clearly, he did not expect this transforming pill ring to be able to restrain the Dai-tier medicinal pill. The flames on the latter's body became a lot fiercer, and the body of the D-tier embryonic pill slowly began to shrink. It actually showed traces of turning into a medicinal pill. Seeing this Dai-tier medicinal pill, who was originally acting mightily, suddenly became so miserable. Everyone's expression quickly paled, their bodies flashed, and they directly rushed towards the Nihility devouring flame. From the looks of it, the reason that the Nihility devouring flame was able to use the transforming pill ring was most likely due to the Toshi ancient god Jade. Humph. Hun Tiandi, who was prepared, immediately let out a cold snort as he saw the two acted. His body moved and appeared in front of the two. With a flick of his finger, a couple of medicinal pills containing rich medicinal fragrance shot towards Gu Yuan duo before suddenly exploding apart. Bang bang. The air churned. Even Gu Yuan's and Ju Kun's body were forcefully dragged down. They coldly laughed. Exploding Tier 9 treasure pill, how grand! The two of them appeared on both sides of Hun Tiandi after their voices sounded. Sharp attacks were unleashed, encompassing Hun Tiandi in the process. Boom boom. Hun Tiandi immediately fell into a disadvantage in the face of Gu Yuan's and Ju Kun's combined attack. He appeared quite miserable as he advanced and retreat. However, he also understood the current situation. Hence, he clenched his teeth and unleashed his full strength in order to do his best to hold back Gu Yuan duo. Get lost. This pestering-like fight caused a ferocity to surge into Ju Kun's eyes. One could see him suddenly letting out a low roar. A couple of huge dragons, which seemed to have occupied hundreds of thousands of feet in the sky, suddenly appeared. The huge dragon turned into a purple-gold light that smashed onto Hun Tiandi, who had just forcefully received a blow from Hun Tiandi with lightning-like speed. Grug. Bright purple-gold light directly penetrated through the powerful defense on the surface of Hun Tiandi's body. It ruthlessly smashed onto his physical body. Immediately, a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out from Hun Tiandi's mouth. His body staggered as he flew backwards by tens of thousands of feet. Only then did he miserably stabilize his body, shrink. The Nihility devouring flame let out a stern cry as Hun Tiandi withdrew. The Dai-tier embryonic pill was collected inside the transforming pill ring without resistance. It turned into a brilliant light cluster the size of a human head and was suspended within the transforming pill ring. The Nihility devouring flame rejoiced upon seeing this scene. He beckoned with his hand, and the transforming pill ring flew towards him with lightning-like speed. However, the transforming pill ring was about to land in his hand when a figure suddenly appeared in front of him and grabbed it. This sudden, unexpected change caused the Nihility devouring flame to be startled. His eyes looked at the messy-haired Hun Tiandi in front of him, and his eyes flickered. Hand over the Dai-tier medicinal pill. Given your current condition, even with the help of the Nihility devouring flame, you are no match for us. Gu Yuan's expression was gloomy as he looked at Hun Tiandi and said. Ju Kun by the side also slowly clenched his fist. His face was ferocious as he stared at Hun Tiandi. You want the D-tier embryonic pill? Hun Tiandi wiped off the trace of blood from the corner of his mouth. He tilted his head to look at the brilliant light cluster in the pill-transforming ring. The cluster of light was like a silver river. The energy of the world seemed to be gathered inside. A strange smile suddenly surfaced on Hun Tiandi's face as he stared at the brilliant cluster of light. After which, he suddenly widened his mouth in front of everyone's shocked eyes and swallowed that brilliant light cluster. He had actually directly swallowed the Dai-tier embryonic pill into his body. This method of swallowing was suicidal. This fellow is crazy. Xiao Yan muttered to himself, although this was only a Dai-tier embryonic pill. The energy that it contained was extremely frightening. If one was careless, one's body and even one's soul would end up exploding from being too full. This action of Hun Tiandi really seemed to be putting all his eggs in one basket. This sudden action of Hun Tiandi exceeded everyone's expectations. Even the nihility devouring flame, who was standing behind, had a change in expression. Immediately, his expression became a little gloomy. Everyone wanted to obtain the D-tier embryonic pill. However, no one expected that Hun Tiandi would swallow it in such a reckless manner. Bastard, Zhu Kun's and Gu Yuan's expressions became dark and solemn after seeing this scene. A rich, murderous intent surged in their eyes as he coldly cried out, "Hun Tiandi, you are asking to die. Haha, seeking death. That is not guaranteed." Hun Tiandi laughed towards the sky upon hearing this. The smile on his face became a little mysterious. At this moment, brilliant light began to rise from within his body. The injuries caused by the combined attacks of Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun was completely healed in an instant. Waves after waves of frightening energy ripples slowly seeped out from within his body. The expressions of Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun were once again altered after they detected the aura within Hun Tiandi's body, which had suddenly become many times stronger. The energy of the embryonic pill had begun to erupt. His strength will soar by many times for a short period of time. After that, however, it is likely that his body and soul would be filled by the increasingly terrifying energy until they explode. Gu Yuan's eyes flashed. He did not panic as he spoke in a deep voice. Do not give him any opportunity to refine it. All we need to do is to quickly stop him, and we will be able to force the Dai-tier embryonic pill from within his body. Zhu Kun's expression had become very grave. He immediately cried out in a low voice, "Attack!" Gu Yuan nodded upon hearing his cry. Hun Tiandi's group had gained a great advantage when it came to subduing the D-tier medicinal pill. Moreover, at the critical moment, the transforming pill ring that was formed by the nihility devouring flame ended up restraining the almighty Dai-tier medicinal pill until it could not retaliate. Qi. The two individuals moved as they desired. A thought had just appeared when they rushed across the sky and shoot towards Hun Tiandi. Haha, all of you are currently no match for me. Hun Tiandi was unafraid after seeing the two rushing over again. He laughed out loud. Both of his fists were clenched before they were suddenly thrown forward. Bang! After Hun Tiandi's fists were thrown forward, two 10,000 feet large vacuum space were directly formed in the sky. Gu Yuan's and Zhu Kun's expressions changed after seeing this wind, which had suddenly become a lot more terrifying. He hurriedly unleashed his Du Qi to receive the attack. Immediately, two deafening loud sounds exploded in the sky. Bam, bam! A frightening extermination storm exploded from Gu Yuan's and Zhu Kun's hand. The directly pushed Xiao Yan duo back by thousands of feet. On the other hand, Hun Tiandi continued to stand proudly in the sky. Moreover, the ripple spreading from within his body also became increasingly terrifying, seeing the situation in the sky changing abruptly. Xiao Yan and the others experienced a great change in expression. It was unexpected that after devouring the Dai-tier medicinal pill, Hun Tiandi's strength would actually soar until such an extent. Moreover, everyone understood that this was only at the initial strengthening stage. If Hun Tiandi was allowed to successfully refine the Dai-tier embryonic pill, he would advance to the Do D class. At that time, there would really be no opportunity to turn things around. Gu Yuan, ultimately, I am still victorious in this fight. Hun Tiandi stepped on the empty air. He looked at Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun before laughing out loud. He had prepared and schemed for many years before he finally reached this most critical stage. It is likely that you are feeling extremely terrible inside, right? Do not be happy too early. Gu Yuan laughed coldly. Hun Tiandi was not irritated upon hearing this. All he did was laughed in a faint voice. He shut his eyes slightly. A drunken expression was revealed in them. It had been many years since he had felt such an increase in strength. Are you able to hold on? The nihility-devouring flame behind Hun Tiandi involuntarily said. If Hun Tiandi really ended up exploding due to being too full of energy, the nihility-devouring flame would definitely be no match for Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun combined. You are far too reckless. The nihility-devouring flame was a little furious as he spoke. No one knew if it was because Hun Tiandi had devoured the D-tier embryonic medicinal pill or because the latter had snatched the pill from his hands. You can be rest assured, I know my limits. Hun Tiandi laughed faintly. He did not appear to panic because of the wildly soaring Du Qi within his body. The nihility-devouring flame's eyes flashed after hearing these words. All he could do was to nod his head and said, "Are you fine now?" "All I need to do is to safely leave." Hun Tiandi laughed. That appearance of his was unusually calm. It was as though he did not bother about Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun. Trying to leave? Do you think that it is so simple? Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun laughed coldly at this moment. Monstrous Du Qi surged, after which it crazily erupted towards Hun Tiandi. However, Hun Tiandi merely waved his hand gently in the face of an attack by the two. He easily blocked the attacks. Hun Tiandi's finger drew past the space beside him when Gu Yuan duo were blocking his attack. A spatial crack appeared. Bang, bang, bang. Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun duo became increasingly wild upon seeing this scene. Powerful Do Qi pillars, which caused one's heart to tremble, penetrated through the empty space. It continuously smashed onto the Do Qi defense in front of Hun Tiandi. Ripples were stirred in the process. Hun Tiandi chose to ignore the attacks from those two. He hand-grabbed below him and forcefully sucked those experts from the Hun clan over before throwing them into the crack in space. Bang, bang! An extermination-like fluctuation was transmitted from behind. Hun Tiandi's face twitched. There was a trace of blood flowing down from the corner of his mouth. "You..." The nihility-devouring flame was greatly startled upon seeing this scene. It seemed that the condition within Hun Tiandi's body was not as good as he had claimed. Of course, fighting against two advanced level 9-star Do Sheng's attacks was not something that he could simply ignore, even if he had the protection of the D-tier embryonic pill. Gu Yuan. I have said that I will ultimately be victorious in this situation. Once I completely refine the D-tier embryonic pill, it would be the time that your Gu clan, Lei clan, Yang clan, Sky Mansion Alliance and Ancient Void Dragon Tribe completely vanish from this world. Hun Tiandi swallowed the fresh, sweet blood in his mouth. He turned his head and looked densely at Gu Yuan's group. His tone was dark and cold as he spoke. "Go." Hun Tiandi grabbed the nihility-devouring flame and tossed his to the spatial crack after his voice sounded. Seeing this, the nihility-devouring flame quickly became anxious. He said, "There is still my..." Before he could finish speaking, however, he saw a couple of bloody cracks appearing on Hun Tiandi's neck. Immediately, he understood that the latter was unable to fight. All he could do was to clench his teeth unwillingly and rush towards the spatial crack. Roar! Gu Yuan's and Zhu Kun's expression changed after they saw that Hun Tiandi was actually able to split the space present. A low roar sounded, after which an energy tide surged and crazily surged towards Hun Tiandi. Bang, bang, bang. The heavy mountain, like wild tide, ruthlessly smashed onto Hun Tiandi's back. His expression quickly paled. Many bloody wounds split all over his body. Blood shot out, and he was dyed into a bloody person in the blink of an eye. However, Hun Tiandi and the nihility-devouring flame relied on this pushing force to charge directly into the crack in space. In a flash, he had vanished. The spatial crack also quickly disappeared. Swoosh! Gu Yuan and Hun Tiandi duo appeared at the spot where the crack in space was. A frightening ripple was surging from their hands. They tore violently, but the space itself had only fluctuated for a moment. No crack lines appeared. Damn it! Gu Yuan and Zhu Kun's expression immediately became ugly upon seeing this scene. This ancient god realm was frighteningly stable. They would have to return to the place where they had entered from if they wished to leave. However, by the time they did so, it was likely that Hun Tiandi's group would have escaped far away. The expressions of those two were gloomy as they slowly descended from the sky. They looked at the similarly quiet group. Finally, they could only sigh. "Daughter, that bastard is far too cunning." Zhu Kun looked at Ziyan, rubbed his hands together and laughed bitterly. Ziyan glanced at him, after which she looked at the quiet Xiaoyan. She shook her head and softly said, What should we do now? Hun Tiandi had obtained the D-tier embryonic pill. If he is allowed to successfully refine it, there would likely really be a big trouble. We will charge directly to the Hun realm now. Lei Ying's expression was ferocious as he spoke. Everyone exchanged glances after hearing this. They immediately nodded. This was the only thing that they could do now. If they sat back and did nothing, their fate would be similar to the Ling and other ancient clans. Xiao Yan sighed softly in his heart. He was aware that Hun Tiandi would not be this foolish. The latter was aware that his current condition was ill-suited for combat. Hence, either they would not return to the Hun clan or they would use some methods to hide the Hun realm. Although hiding a realm was extremely troublesome, it would not be difficult given Hun Tiandi's ability. Moreover, the Hun clan had prepared for this for thousands of years. Naturally, they would be fully prepared. Hopefully, that fellow will be unable to refine the D-tier embryonic pill. Otherwise, Xiao Yan curled his mouth. He lifted his head and glanced at the others, only to discover that there was also some worry in their eyes. Once Hun Tiandi broke through to the Do-D class, there would really be no one in this world who can restrain him. Given his vengeful character, all the factions in the Alliance army would definitely suffer from his destructive vengeance. It is pointless to think of more. Gather our people and hurry to the Hun realm. We will hold back Hun Tiandi before they could prepare themselves. As long as we do not give him any time to refine the D-tier embryonic pill, he would end up exploding from the energy of the D-tier embryonic pill without us needing to do anything. Gu Yuan inhaled a deep breath and spoke in a deep voice. Everyone nodded upon hearing this. Ugh, wait a moment. Jukun's eyes suddenly flashed after he saw that everyone planned to leave. He laughed. Since we have come to this place, we must naturally not leave empty-handed. All of you should step aside. I will bring this square and the stone statue out of this place. Xiao Yan's group was stunned. Their eyes swept over the square. Although there were many heavenly flames present, they were no different than some specimens. It was pointless to take them. That statue had also once again become original with the departure of the D-tier embryonic pill. You can do as you like. Gu Yuan was currently in an extremely bad mood. He waved his hand, turned around and rushed towards the spatial tunnel. Everyone followed behind him. Xiao Yan was one of the last to leave. He took another glance at Zhu Qin before frowning slightly. This old dragon emperor would not do something completely useless. Could it be that there is something strange about the square at the stone statue? Xiao Yan thought for a moment, but it was a futile effort. All he could do was to take a deep look at the smiling Zhu Kun. After which, he proceeded to follow Gu Yuan. The Alliance army filled one's eyes within the mountain range covered with chilly winds. At this moment, Gu Yuan and the rest had a somewhat ugly expression as they stood in front of a ruins around a huge door. It was possible to detect a vague spatial fluctuation from this mess. The path to the Hun realm had already been destroyed. Gu Yuan's expression was gloomy. He glanced at everyone before he spoke. Additionally, based on my probing, the Hun realm has already been hidden. It looks like they were prepared. Xiao Yan gently exhaled. His expression was grave. It was unexpected that the current situation would be so severe. The Hun clan had completely hid their realm. In this way, even Gu Yuan was unable to find their position within a short while, although it was impossible for the Hun clan to continue hiding like this forever. All they needed to do was to hide until Hun Tiandi refined that D-tier embryonic pill. At that time, the Alliance army had already completely fell into a disadvantage. We have already dispatched people to probe the other tunnels that leads to the Hun realm, Yan Jin said. Gu Yuan shook his head slightly. Since the Hun clan was prepared, it was obvious that they would not leave such a fatal loophole. Their army was currently on the offensive, but they were unable to find their way in. This mission of theirs could be considered a failure. What should we do now? Lei Ying was quiet for a moment. His voice was a little hoarse as he spoke. Now, all we can do is wait and see who has a better luck. Gu Yuan sighed softly. Wait for what? Lei Ying asked in a startled voice. Refining the D-tier embryonic pill also involves some chances of failure. Now, the only thing that we can do is to pray that Hun Tiandi is unable to successfully refine the D-tier embryonic pill. As long as he failed to step into the Do-D class, we will have an opportunity. Of course, if he succeed. Gu Yuan paused after he spoke until this point. It seems that the heavens wish for us to perish. Everyone was quiet, their hearts sunk. Without realizing it, they had already come to such a stage. Let's scatter. We will leave some spies behind. Gu Yuan waved his hand, after which he slowly walked to the back. During this period of time, I will do my best to find the location where the Hun realm is hiding. If we are lucky, we might be able to discover it early. At that time, we will decide if we will charge into the Hun realm and engage in a decisive fight with them. Everyone was quiet after hearing Gu Yuan's words. All of them understood that they currently did not have much of a choice. Xiao Yan lifted his head towards the sky and exhaled softly. He immediately looked at the somewhat tired back of Gu Yuan. The 8 ancient clans had fought many times for the ancient god mansion. It was unexpected that the Hun clan actually ended up benefiting in the end. Let's go. Xiao Yan pulled Jun Er's and Kai Lin's somewhat icy hands. He shook his head and led the group to withdraw. The Alliance army, which covered the entire place, gradually withdrew from the mountain range. Although news did not spread, that solemn atmosphere still ended up spreading involuntarily. It caused the entire Alliance army to feel quite pressured. The Alliance army withdrew. Finally, they returned to the headquarters of the Sky Mansion Alliance. They had ended up in failure, but the Alliance did not scatter as a result. This was because all of them understood that by cooperating in the face of Hun Tiandi, who had managed to obtain the D-tier embryonic pill, they might still be able to survive. Once they separated, however, they would undoubtedly die. Hence, the Alliance army forces continued to stay guard around the Sky Mansion Alliance and continuously observed the activity on the Central Plains, following the scattering of the Alliance army. Time passed by a day at a time while many waited anxiously. However, Gu Yuan, who had been probing the location of the hidden Hun realm, did not stir any activity as the time flowed by. This result caused the hearts of many to sink slightly. Given the current situation, every additional day Hun Tiandi had to refine the pill meant an additional danger to the Alliance army, although their hearts were searing hot. Everyone understood that regardless of how anxious one was helpless in the face of the change in situation. Xiao Yan stood within the star realm as he lifted his head and looked at the huge square floating in the distant sky. It had been brought out from within the ancient god realm by Zhu Qin. There was a 100,000 feet tall stone statue on it. Although one was unable to see anything unique, its mountain-like size still caused many to be shocked. It has been a month. Xiao Yan involuntarily muttered to himself as he stared at the huge square floating in the sky. An entire month had passed ever since Hun Tiandi had snatched the D-tier embryonic pill. During this 1 month, the Hun clan appeared to have completely vanished from this world. No information about them spread. Some of the outsiders who were unaware of the situation even thought that the Hun clan was eliminated by the Alliance army. Many factions came to congratulate them. However, Xiao Yan and the rest did not have the mood to bother about these people. They dispatched some individuals to receive them and dismissed these people. Xiao Yan Ge, a gentle voice was transmitted from behind him. Xiao Yan turned his head and looked at the picture-like lady, who was gently walking over. He also gave a faint smile. "Is there any news from Uncle Gu?" Xiao Yan inquired. He only sighed in disappointment after seeing Shun shake her head. Waves of furtage rose within his heart as he shut his eyes. This kind of waiting without doing anything was really terrible. Shun looked at this young man, whose face was filled with tiredness. As she stood in front of Xiao Yan, she gently leaned against him. Her exquisite face was lifted and her somewhat warm hand gently massaged Xiao Yan's temples in an attempt to relieve him of some fatigue. Xiao Yan relaxed his arms as he sniffed the tempting body fragrance from the girl in front of him. He hugged that gently waist and buried his head into Jun black hair. Finally, he muttered, "Am I finally going to fail after working hard for so many years? Xiao Yan Gege is already extremely incredible." Shun smiled and softly replied, "Regardless of what the ending will be in the future, Xiao Yan Gege will be considered to be the most successfully in the hearts of many people." "I have clearly failed." Xiao Yan smiled bitterly and stated, "Did Xiao Yan Gege not mention that only by putting things down will one be able to lift things up? Letting things go as one wish is the epitome of a free and unrestrained person." Jun spoke in a soft and gentle voice. "Now is different from the past. If I put things down now, the entire Sky Mansion Alliance and even the Lei and Yan clans." Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air. He lifted his head and looked at the bright moon in the sky. He said, "At times, one can pick things up but cannot simply let them go." Jun-Er bit her red lips as she looked at the face, which once again revealed a determination. She continued to be embraced by Xiao Yan while an extremely pretty smile surfaced on her face. "Xiao Yan, Gege, we will succeed." Time flowed by. Another half a month swiftly passed amidst everyone's uneasiness. The Hun clan continued to be completely quiet during this half a month. It was as though they had completely vanished without a trace. All the various upper echelons of the alliance sat within a large hall. There was a worry on their brow. Each day that passed caused an increase in the uneasiness of their hearts. Xiaoyan gently sighed as he looked at the somewhat depressed hall. This feeling of being able to do nothing while waiting for the appearance of the Hun clan was really terrible. Damn it! Why is it that these bastards have still not appeared? If they wish to fight, then let's fight. My Lei clan will fight a bloody battle with them until the end. This period of time is far too suffocating. Lei Ying suddenly slammed his palm on the table amidst this gloominess and shattered the table into dust. He suddenly stood up and spoke with gritting teeth. "Who is going to fight with you? Where will you go to fight?" Yan Jin by the side frowned and stated. Lei Ying clenched his teeth and finally sighed in a tired manner. He sat back down. The Hun clan had been hiding. Where would he find them to fight? Everyone. Xiao Yan overlooked the hall. He was just about to utter some words to raise everyone's morale when the space within the hall shook. Gu Yuan's figure was revealed. Everyone present suddenly stood up after seeing Gu Yuan's appearance. They anxiously asked, "Is there any information?" Gu Yuan's expression was unusually grave. He slowly nodded Dex. Before everyone could rejoice, however, he said, "I have indeed found the location of the Hun realm, but it is already too late." A basin of cold water seemed to have splashed over everyone after they heard these words. The excitement on their faces had suddenly disappeared. "What does Uncle Gu mean?" Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment before asking. Gu Yuan sighed. His eyes were quickly thrown towards the sky above the central plains. The entire central plains suddenly shook intensely when he did so. This scene was detected by Xiao Yan's group. They hurriedly walked out from the hall and looked at the distant sky. There was suddenly a black circle of light appearing. This light circle spread at a shocking speed the moment it appeared. The entire central plains was enveloped within it. Bang, bang, bang. The natural energy that filled the entire central plains had suddenly boiled with the appearance of this light circle. Countless number of experts paled from shock as they lifted their heads to observe the sky. Under the focus of countless number of experts from the central plains, the black light began to shake in the sky. Finally, it turned into a light cauldron in front of many horrified eyes. The size of the cauldron could not be described. It seemed to have enveloped the entire central plains within it. Xiao Yan and the rest had a change in expression as they watched the unusual scene in the sky. They could sense a familiar feeling amidst the endless light. It was that of Hun Tiandi. Hun Tiandi has already formed an initial merger with the Dai-tier embryonic pill. Now, he intends to use the central plains as a cauldron, lives as the ingredients, the world as the flame, and his body as the pill. Gu Yuan clenched his fist tightly as his low and deep voice resounded beside everyone's ears. He is planning to truly refine that Dai-tier embryonic pill into an actual Dai pill. Once the pill is formed, he would also advance into the Do D class. Hun Tiandi, all of us has underestimated his wild ambition. Hiss. Everyone present inhaled a deep breath of cool air after hearing Gu Yuan's words. A shock surged within their eyes, creating a Dai-tier medicinal pill. Who in this world had the ability to do such a thing? Hun Tiandi was not an alchemist. How could he refine it? The medicinal pill has an embryonic form, meaning most important step in a pill refinement was completed by the Toshi ancient god. If Hun Tiandi is able to finish the final pill-forming step, it is not impossible for this D-tier embryonic pill to become a true Dai-tier medicinal pill. Xiao Yan licked his lips and slowly explained, "We have indeed underestimated Hun Tiandi's wild ambition. Although the Dai-tier embryonic pill is powerful, there are only some chance of success in allowing him to break through to the Do D class. However, if he refined the Dai-tier embryonic pill into a true Dai-tier medicinal pill, he would magnify this chance of success by many times. One can even say that as long as he possesses an actual D-tier medicinal pill, he would able to step across the barrier that had hindered him for thousands of years. The originally doubtful individuals became quiet after hearing Xiaoyan, who could be considered as the top alchemist on the current Duqi continent. Speaking in this manner, the D-tier embryonic pill was not what Hun Tiandi genuinely wanted. Instead, he wanted a true D-tier medicinal pill. In that case, now should be quite a good opportunity for us, right? Since Hun Tiandi needed to complete the final step of the D-tier embryonic pill, he would definitely have to reveal himself. At that time, we will intervene and stop him. Lei Ying spoke in a deep voice. I do not know what kind of secret method Hun Tiandi had used, but he had already completely merged with the D-tier medicinal pill. With his current strength, it is likely extremely difficult for even Zhu Kun and I to stop him. Gu Yuan shook his head. He paused for a moment before speaking. I think that if it not because refining the D-tier medicinal pill is currently the most important thing, the Hun clan would likely have come invading us. Everyone was startled upon hearing this. The situation was getting from bad to worse. Back then, they were still able to fight equal. Moreover, with the appearance of Zhu Kun, the Alliance army had even gained the upper hand. In the end, this upper hand had completely vanished in such a short amount of time. What should we do? Don't tell me that we will simply just watch him truly refining a D-tier medicinal pill. There is still a chance if we fight now. Once the D-tier medicinal pill's final step is completed, there will really be no one to stop Hun Tiandi. Lei Ying spoke in a deep voice. Everyone nodded after Lei Ying spoke. Currently, the situation was the worst possible one. They would really be finished if they did not act. Gu Yuan placed his hands behind him. Their expressions were gloomy as the stares at the indescribable enormous light cauldron. A moment later, he said, "We will temporarily wait and see. Refining a D-tier medicinal pill is not something that can be completed immediately. We need to calculate the best moment to strike." Everyone mused for a moment after hearing this. Finally, they nodded. The situation might be extremely terrible, but they must not panic. The Central Plains had descended into quite a big commotion at this moment. The source of this commotion was naturally the huge light cauldron that was formed in the sky. The ripple vaguely emitted from it caused many experts to feel uneasy. Half a day or so after the light cauldron appeared, a black light appeared in the distant sky. Finally, a black light shot out from all directions in front of the countless pairs of eyes and formed an extremely huge formation. After this formation appeared, a figure with long scattered hair also appeared at the middle of the formation, Hun Tiandi. Gu Yuan's group, who had been monitoring the development of the situation, shrunk their eyes the moment they saw the figure hidden within the large formation. All of them focused on that spot. Gu Yuan, now, do you regret not agreeing to cooperate with me back then? A pair of eyes penetrated through the clouds from within the formation and shot towards a certain spot on the Central Plains. A faint voice that vaguely contained an extremely terrifying pressure resounded over the entire Central Plains. Gu Yuan's expression was as deep as water. Both of his hands were clenched tightly, but he did not speak. My many years of planning is finally useful now. Ultimately, I am the winner of this 1,000-year battle. The huge formation that covered the entire Central Plains suddenly unleashed many light pillars after Hun Tiandi's voice sounded. These light pillars directly shot to various spots on the land. Rumble, the entire Central Plains seemed to have shook violently the moment the light pillar landed on the ground. A city stood on a flat plain somewhere within the Central Plains. It was very lively and could be considered to be a highly populated city. Bang! However, this liveliness did not continue for long. A huge crack suddenly spread over the city as the land began to shake. Immediately, many strong individuals rose into the air in shock. Before they could react, however, a black light had suddenly broke from the land and covered the entire city within it. Boom, boom, boom. The many human figures within the city suddenly exploded under the cover of the black light pillars. A bloody fog and shattered flesh burst apart. This sudden, unexpected occurrence caused everyone to become stunned. They looked at the human figures who that had exploded into a bloody fog. A deep horror and shock swiftly surged out from within his heart like floodwater. The city descended into chaos amidst the horror. All of them crazily fled towards the city gate. Some of the stronger individuals even leaped into the air and escaped. Before they could escape, however, the panic from the self-destruction spread apart. In an instant, blood fog spread within the city. The viscous blood and shattered flesh buried half of the city. Black light pillar covered the city in a bloody sea. Waves of bloody aura flowed and slowly rose. Finally, it turned into a blood-colored light pillar. It charged towards the sky and rushed into the huge large formation that covered the central plains. Blood light shot out and the black light disappeared. It left behind a bloody scent, which was so dense that it caused the place to be a repulsive death city. Creek, the people who had just entered the city at the entrance. He looked at the slowly opening city gate. Joy had yet to appear on their faces when their eyes were filled with a bloody sea that surged forth. Immediately, a sharp cry resounded. A situation that was similar to this city was being enacted in many parts of the Central Plains. Dense bloody fog had basically covered the sky above the entire Central Plains. Even the air had been mixed with a rich bloody scent. The entire Central Plains had begun to panic at this moment. Gu Yuan. Xiao Yan and the others stood in the air of a city a short distance from the Sky Mansion Alliance. They looked down at the sea of blood in the city below. Their faces were completely green. What happened? Yan Jin watched this scene, inhaled a cold breath, and said Gu Yuan had a green face. He waved his sleeve, and the cracks in the city was forcefully pulled apart. The sea of blood was expelled. With the spreading of the cracks, a blood-colored formation appeared underground. Dense white bones filled the place. A dark and stern aura surged towards the sky. Devouring spirit, eliminating life formation. An involuntary exclamation sounded. Shock surged onto the faces of Yan Jin and the others after seeing the formation hidden underground. What ruthless technique! Lei Ying clenched his teeth and said, "Devouring spirit, eliminating life formation." It was an extremely vicious formation that originated from the ancient times. This formation would turn all life covered within its boundary into blood. Moreover, it would forcefully extract energy from within the blood. Due to this formation being overly vicious, it had long since ceased to exist. Unexpectedly, this Hun clan was able to unleash it. These formations had been placed by the Hun clan. It seems that the Hall of Souls mission might appear to be collecting souls on the surface, but they have quietly placed many of these devouring spirit eliminating life formations underground within the Central Plains. Gu Yuan spoke in a gloomy voice. The Hun clan is really well prepared for this. With so many devouring spirit eliminating life formation forcefully absorbing energy, the speed at which Hun Tiandi refined the D-tier medicinal pill will significantly increase. Xiao Yan lifted his head, looked at the huge formation in the distant sky and said, "However, this devouring spirit eliminating life formation also requires an extremely great amount of energy to activate. I think that the Hun clan had exhausted all of its energy at this moment. They are betting everything on this. Let's return and discuss our plan. The Hun clan has created such a great massacre. It could be considered the enemy of everyone. If we gather everyone's strength, it might be possible to fight them." Gu Yuan waved his hand, after which he rushed towards the headquarters. Everyone hurriedly followed. Xiao Yan glanced at their backs, only to sigh softly. Although they had the strength in numbers, the strength of Hun Tiandi alone would likely be able to battle all the experts in this world should he advance to the Dodi class. This was the terrifying aspect of an elite Dodi. We can only do our best. Everyone had only just returned to the headquarters when they saw Zhu Kun, who had been missing for over half a month, standing outside the large hall. Ziyan was standing behind him. It is unexpected that this fellow would actually have such a technique. Zhu Kun sighed after seeing Xiao Yan and the others. Clearly, they had also detected the action of Hun Tiandi. Gu Yuan nodded quietly and said, "Now, all we can do is to try our best to gather more people. As long as we can break the big formation in the sky, Hun Tiandi's beautiful dream will be shattered." However, even he could only laugh bitterly when he uttered these words. An ordinary expert was as insignificant as an ant in Hun Tiandi's eyes. However, just how many experts like them existed in the Duchi continent? We can only do this now. However, once Hun Tiandi is allowed to advance into the Dudi class, everything will be over. Xiao Yan laughed bitterly and said Zhu Kun was quiet. His hand rubbed together in a habitual fashion, after which he glanced at Ziyan behind him. Finally, he inhaled a deep breath of air and said, "It is not completely over. He can advance into the Dodi class. On our side, we can also create one."